Ntate Kholofelo Maponya. So you and I have a personal relationship, and it's important that I add this disclaimer because I think this might be a heated sit down, and I apologize in advance to our relationship. But I'm here on behalf of ordinary South Africans. I'm here on behalf of the people that contribute to the GEPF, the pension fund of government employees, of which a bulk of that money goes to the PIC. I'm here on behalf of people that contribute to the UIF and just ordinary South Africans. You have been accused, from my personal perspective, unfairly so, of many dodgy things. And this sit down aims to hear your side of the story. And in doing that, I'm hoping to ask questions on behalf of the South African public and other stakeholders, and I hope that you'll engage me. I don't know if you want to greet and have pleasantries, or if we can just dive straight in, because this is mostly about Matjila Maponya Investments, MMI, and the PIC, and the issues that you guys have had, which many people actually don't know about. But it's painted you and your business in a bad light. You look like a typical BEE front, and you look like someone who's just enjoying and looting South African money like other people out there. What is your side of the story? How did it start? How did you start working with the PIC, and what business is this about?
Good morning, Pen.
Yes, sir.
And I'll start with the greetings and pleasantries.
Thank you.
As an African.
Yes.
In my home language, Sepedi, they say, Shagula hloka thobela ke mojano, which means that if people go past each other and don't greet each other, they become strangers and enemies and easier to kill each other. You mentioned the GPF, you mentioned the UIF. May I also add people who contribute to the Workmen's Compensation Fund, because that is also one of the funders of the Daybreak initiative. And they funded the initiative because the company was underperforming and 3,400 jobs were at stake. And when I went to them after I had secured funding, I went to them to secure equity, because, every time you want to fund something as a BE, you are told to bring skin in the game. But we all know that we don't have that legacy of having stacks of cash in the background.
Sorry to interrupt. So Daybreak, if you could explain what that business is, and then for people that may not know, what is equity and what is skin in the game? Just briefly.
So Daybreak is an integrated poultry business where it starts from parent chickens to a hatchery, from the hatchery to the grower farms, from the grower farms to the abattoir, and from the abattoir to the fridge and to the table. And it also includes feeding the chickens and maintaining the health of the chickens. So it is a large business.
Chicken business.
Yes.
That goes through the whole value chain up until we have chicken on our plate.
Yes.
Okay.
So in simple language, we call it from farm to plate.
Okay.
So it is a business that holds a few communities alive in the provinces of Limpopo, Gauteng, and Mpumalanga. That is farmers, that is workers, that is growers, that is suppliers of other services, small businesses, large businesses trade with this company. And so there are so many livelihoods that depended on it. And we actually went to the former owners, which was AFGRI.
Okay.
And we made a proposition in 2013, 2012, can't remember exactly, that we could actually market the chickens to improve their bottom line. And at that stage, I bought a farm next to their abattoir, but my farm was supplying another industry player.
Okay.
And so while we were supplying the other industry player, I marketed Daybreak Farm's chicken, and I ran into problems because the chickens did not meet certain standards that clients wanted. For example, the current problems that are happening now, they're actually a repeat of what was happening back then.
Okay.
The market wanted a certain size of a bed, and the company was supplying double that size. Now, that double that size is not marketable because, remember, we are Africans, we count pieces. We actually don't call it chicken. We call it pieces.
Of course.
So we count pieces. We don't count the weight. We are not like the European and American markets where they eat chicken breast and they want the weight of the breast.
Yes.
We want to know that each child got a piece or got 2 pieces out of the pot. So the weight was killing because then the chickens were too expensive. They were too heavy. Now, if that chicken is too heavy, it means, number one, you overfed it, which means you spend almost twice as much on feeding it as opposed to what you could have fed it and then slaughtered it at a right date. Number two, you are selling it at a price point per kilogram whereby the person affords half of that
Gets half of the pieces.
and gets half of the pieces. So most of these chickens were going into storage, and there was many of these issues. We knew what the problems were, and we hired firms like McKinsey to give us reports on what was happening and how it could be turned around. We hired 3 industry experts in terms of production and all those things. And we made a presentation after paying millions of rands to do the studies. We made a presentations to the investment committees of the PIC. But before we could buy Daybreak, the management and the new owners of AFGRI, who wanted to buy AFGRI from the stock exchange and delist it, liked the way I was conducting my business and the knowledge. And they gave me a condition that they will sell me AFGRI only after I agree to be their partner in AFGRI.
They'll sell you AFGRI or Daybreak?
They'll sell me AFGRI poultry, which is Daybreak, only after I go into partnership with them to buy AFGRI.
Okay.
So
AFGRI poultry?
No, AFGRI, the holding company. So this was a very scary big deal to me. I've never done a BEE deal before in my life. And I said, but I'm a poultry farmer. Those other things that you are talking about is a very big industry. And they said, but you come from a farming background. Your father was the founding president of the National African Farmers Union. You farm cattle, you farm everything. So you have knowledge of the industry. We would prefer to have a partner like you as opposed to a token BEE.
Okay. You had the experience.
So I was offered 35% of AFGRI. We did the due diligence on that. Now I had to spend another money. I had to sell one of my farms actually to pay for the due diligence, for my portion of the due diligence to buy AFGRI. And when we bought AFGRI again, PIC from the 35%, PIC took 15% for themselves. And because they brought the money, there was nothing I could do.
Okay, let's go a few steps back. I wanted you to simplify equity. When you say you had to buy equity, that's a stake in the company for people to understand.
Yes.
When you speak about skin in the game, you're speaking about that you need to bring something in a deal, whether it's money or assets,
Yes.
which most people don't have.
Which most people don't have. But we brought guarantees of assets worth about 300 million rands.
Where were these guarantees coming from?
They were coming from properties that we were developing, townships in Limpopo and farms.
Okay. So I don't want to get confused. I want to take it one step at a time. You had bought a farm near one of the Daybreak farms. You spoke about Limpopo, Gauteng, and Mpumalanga. And you were supplying one of their competitors, I'd like to think. And you saw an opportunity in this business, Daybreak.
Yes.
And in seeing the opportunity, you decided to get industry experts like McKinsey and the like to do due diligence on Daybreak.
Yes.
And then in pitching to AFGRI to say, look, we can see Daybreak is struggling. You'd had, I'm guessing because you do business with their competitors and you work close to them, you can see that something's wrong here.
Yes.
Because you're marketing for them, they're supplying something that clients don't want, and there's a problem. You're like, I think I can come in and solve this.
Yes.
So please sell me this business. And for that, they said, we're going to sell you equity. We need skin in the game, which is assets, etc. But in pitching, they said, look, not just AFGRI Poultry, we want you to buy a stake in the holding company, 35%.
Yes. And they said that once you have done the first deal with us, we will then on-sell you 100% of the poultry business.
Okay. Now,
and true to their word, they kept to their word.
In that, they said, look, there's an opportunity here for a BEE deal, and we'd rather work with you because you've got experience.
Yes.
Your father's known in Limpopo and in South Africa as a businessman, in farming, in butcheries, etc. I think also in vehicles, retail.
Yes.
They said, look, you need to do due diligence. I want to stop here a little bit because this is important for myself and for other people out there. You're not an ordinary person because, number one, you're already farming, which most people wouldn't be able to get into. Number two, you already had the ability to raise guarantees of 300 million. Yes. And you could also afford millions in due diligence from, Abo McKinsey are expensive and other experts. Yes. So you're already an established, successful business person before doing this deal.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's the issue that after the deal, I bought a plane. I would also like to clarify that.
A plane?
I had a similar plane that when you go to Nampo, you get a lot of them, which was a propeller plane, which I had bought in 2006. And only in 2013, I started swapping my shares in Beggarsford Mall for the plane that we had used together with my partner in Beggarsford Mall when we were building Beggarsford Mall, and he was building also another mall in Siabuswa. We could not make all the trips because the roads and everything were not so conducive. So he bought a small plane, and he decided to upgrade his plane and hand me down this one and give me an option to swap my shares in the mall for this aeroplane.
Okay.
And there is this perception that I got into Daybreak and I got a lot of fees, and then I bought aeroplanes and other things. I had an aeroplane since 2006.
Okay, before this deal, which you said around 2012, 2013 is when you saw the opportunity.
That's when I saw the opportunity. Only in 2015 did we close the deal.
Okay. You had a plane from 2006 already, having swapped shares. Okay.
No, I bought the first plane non-pressurized cash, and I swapped the shares in 2013 for another one, for a replacement one.
Okay. We'll go back to the plane. You see this opportunity. So it's two deals, if I'm getting you correctly. It's a deal to buy AFGRI Poultry, which is Daybreak, and it's a deal to get 35% of AFGRI, the holding company as a whole. For this, you put up 300 million in guarantees your own. And for people to understand, a guarantee is not necessarily, I'm taking everything I own and I sell it. It's to say if anything goes wrong, this is what you can take from me with 300 million. Am I correct?
Literally to say that if anything goes wrong, me and my family go look for an RDP house.
Okay. Because you'd lose everything that you had at the time.
Yes.
Okay. We can argue that your business value at the time was 300 million as a guarantee. Then you decide to approach certain people, because what I want to know now is, what was the value of AFGRI Poultry? What was the value of this 35% stake, which would make you then want to approach a PIC, UIF, and you said workman's compensation?
AFGRI, the AFGRI transaction was our portion, which was reduced to 20%. We paid about 340 million rands for.
340 million.
For the 20%.
All of this money came from the PIC?
Yes.
Okay. 340 million for 20%. You didn't get 35%?
PIC took 15% for themselves.
Oh, and then you guys kept 20. Yes. This is MMI's stake.
Yes.
Matjila Commission Investments. PIC took 15% because they put up the money, 340. Yes. On the back of your guarantees.
And I must also say that within 2 years, the company made all that money back that we actually bought the company for.
The 340?
A combined 2.5 billion rands.
This is Daybreak?
No, this is
AFGRI.
And that money, if you have ever heard of a thing called capital misallocation, that money was put into ventures instead of repaying our loans.
Okay, we'll need to get to the nitty-gritty of that. How much did you say AFGRI made in a year? 2 point?
In 2 years,
in 2 years,
it recovered 2.5 billion rand in cash.
2.5 billion. This is income for AFGRI?
Yes.
Income.
It was actually a sale of assets.
From AFGRI?
Yes.
Or not income? So this was hard cash? It was
part income as part sale of assets. This was hard cash that was supposed to be used to repay my loan. But instead, the majority shareholders decided to go and invest in other companies. And when we refused to say that those companies cannot work and we would want the money to pay our shares, PIC voted against us and actually said that, and we said that, but we don't have this money. They said that if we accommodated other people in our shareholding, remember they've already taken 15% from us. Now in the 20%, they say if we accommodate other people in that shareholding, they will then support us further into debt. And I said I could not take debt over things that I can see are not going to work. And they went and invested in a bank that was failing and in a new food company. And all that money was lost. We were not shareholders in those companies, but AFGRI was a surety for those companies. So all our money was lost on behalf of companies owned by the PIC and other shareholders, and our loan could not be repaid.
Okay.
And they went to the media and said that I owed them money, I didn't pay their debt.
You go to the PIC, AFGRI wants to do a BEE deal with you, with MMI,
Yes.
Matjila Maponya Investments,
Yes.
for 35% of AFGRI. You don't have the money, but you're willing to put up guarantees, 300 million.
Yes.
The PIC says, look, we'll fund this 35% on condition that we take 15% and then you keep 20. Two questions. The one, would the getting 35% of AFGRI include AFGRI Poultry, or is that a separate deal? Number one. And then number two, this 340 million, I'm assuming, was a loan from the PIC. What were the terms in terms of annual payments, interest, etc.?
So AFGRI Poultry was included in that deal.
In this deal of 35%?
Yes.
Okay.
And everyone knew, and it was a precondition of my participation, that I would then buy that company back.
Which company? Poultry?
The poultry.
Daybreak?
Yes.
At some point?
Yes.
But it wasn't necessarily yours. It belonged to AFGRI and you owned a stake in AFGRI.
Yes.
But a big part of it is you believe you can turn this around.
Yes.
So you'll focus on fixing the poultry. Other people will be running other divisions.
Yes.
Okay. What were the terms from the PIC? The 340 million, I'm guessing, was a loan.
It was a loan. It was payable out of dividends or out of cash generated from the business.
Okay.
Which is why I emphasize on the fact that we did generate the cash that would have paid the loan. It was misallocated.
Okay. I don't know if this is important. Do you remember the interest rates that you were given by the PIC?
You go to a loan shark, you get better interest rates.
It was a high rate.
It was a very high rate.
This is important for people that belong to the GPF and people that fund the PIC to understand. If the PIC's mandate, of course, is to create value, but when they're giving loans, especially in things like BE transactions, should there not be favorable terms in terms of interest?
That is what should happen, but that is not what any other entrepreneur has seen. A lot of BE enterprises have been sunk by interest. It is not only the PIC who charge this type of rates. Some are better than the PIC. The PIC takes that equity participation and then takes a very high interest. And then you find yourself in a position where you are working yourself off. But I folded my shirts and I worked off.
Yeah. And
in all the transactions that I've introduced to the PIC, there's none that has ever failed except through the interference of the PIC.
You've done deals with them before this one, or was this the first one?
The AFGRI one was the first one. The second one was SA Home Loan.
Okay.
And then Daybreak was the third one.
Okay, so we're not here today for SA Home Loans, I think. And then when you say Daybreak would be the third one, this is what you were saying earlier, that at some point you were meant to, Daybreak was meant to break away and that becomes your business on its own. Okay. I think I've got that for now. I want to move forward to ask.
And I want to also clear that we were funding Daybreak with the IDC and not with the PIC. So
when you include the PIC here, you're just saying you were buying it from them?
Yes, we were buying it from AFGRI.
From AFGRI, okay.
Yes. The PIC, through their partners who actually had a bigger interest in the labor part of the component, then saw it fit to fund the whole transaction when we only requested the equity portion from them.
This is for Daybreak?
Yes.
Okay, this comes later. It was meant to be fully funded by the IDC. The PIC decided to come in to that deal as well.
Because the IDC needed about 200 million of equity from our own pockets. Our guarantees were all used up with the PIC.
Okay. Okay, before I get to the plane, I'm just trying to keep track so I don't get confused. To summarize, I guess, just for myself and for my sanity, you are a businessman, you are a farmer. You see an opportunity to buy a company, an integrated chicken company, farming business from farm to plate called Daybreak, which is AFGRI Poultry. You've been doing marketing for them. You realize that they're struggling to supply to the clients what makes sense. And you make an offer for Daybreak. In making an offer, the guys at AFGRI are like, hey, we know you. We know your father. You've got good credentials. You're a real businessman. But we'd like you to do a BEE deal. You're not a classic BEE guy who's just maybe coming there to front. You're actually a business person, and they're like, we'd like to work with you. In doing that, maybe not even forget, but let's park Daybreak. We want to give you 35% of AFGRI as a whole. We're going to need you to bring guarantees. We're going to need you to bring money. The money you don't have, the guarantees you have, because to get the money, you need to sell the guarantees, which you're not willing to do. You approach the PIC. The PIC says, look, we'll give you 340 million to buy this 35% stake, but there's going to be a few conditions. Number one, we're going to take 15%. You're going to keep 20. Number two, we're going to charge you interest, a high interest rate, which I've personally got a problem with. And then number three, which I think is one of the things I've heard you complain about in the past, they meddled in the operations, which was, I don't know if that was part of the terms and conditions. Because if I'm getting a loan from a bank, I've brought guarantees to the bank, but they offering the cash. They are now taking a stake in this business. Number one, I don't know if that's standard business procedure. Maybe you can advise. And number two, they also want to be involved in the running of that business, of which I'm not aware if the PIC runs businesses or if they just meant to sit on boards just to ensure that the stake is running fine.
They're not supposed to be running businesses. Secondly, the people sitting at the PIC don't have the experience and the breadth for the running of those businesses in most cases. They are mostly business analysts.
That's correct, yeah. That's my understanding.
And this is a culture that I was not aware of. Like I said, I had never been in a PE deal, and when I was told this is how it is done, I said, okay, let's see how it pans out. But like you can see, the meddling and the participation in both Daybreak and in AFGRI resulted in those types of losses. In SA Home Loans, I could say perhaps Standard Bank, being the bigger partner, assisted more in the governance issues.
Okay. I want to get to where your problem started, because this deal, even though we may not like it, seems fine up to now. The first problem I see being picked up is you're saying in 2 years, AFGRI made money that should have settled the loan, but that money was misused. And you said the majority shareholders, which would be the other 65%, I don't know if you'd include the PIC there, they decided in using this money that, no, we want to invest somewhere else. And you're alluding to the fact that some of these things that they invested in didn't do well. The second thing is the PIC meddling with what's meant to be your 35%, but they took 15%. And I guess they would make decisions that are contrary to what you think are best for the loan and maybe for the business as well, of which the AFGRI people didn't approach the PIC. They approached you. So now when the PIC is going over your decision-making, it's almost like they don't value why you were even brought to the table.
So I realized very late that it was actually, I don't know if you have heard of a concept called duplicity.
Okay.
Duplicity is when you make something look like something that it is not, knowing very well that you are at some point going to activate the alternative. So them taking 15% shares was actually an act of duplicity in AFGRI, and them also doing certain things in other companies whereby they would have one share extra above me, and they would say, but it's just a percentage. You discover much later as a non-experienced corporate that they actually set you up to have a special majority with the other partners. So 65 and 15 is 80%.
Yes.
So they pass the threshold of 75% majority. So they can make decisions without you. So 90% of the time they went and held meetings together, made the decisions, and they would come to a board meeting or to a shareholders meeting and make a proposition on something they've already agreed on, and that they would go and do on their own and use this company's guarantees and everything. So I was just sitting there as a lame duck.
Which is probably what they used to, from what I know, at least from other PE appointees.
Yes, so the word is duplicity. So it is intentional, and in every word is intended to actually disadvantage a person in a legal way.
Okay. So all of these things are happening behind the scenes. Us ordinary people are not aware of these deals and what's going on. That's got to do with you as a businessman, your funders being the PIC, the company that you own a stake in being AFGRI. Where does it now become public knowledge that, look, there's something wrong here and there are people to be blamed? Because I know you personally, as I said, and to me, you came across as a victim. But you become a victim not because you decided to start speaking out. You become a victim because you are now being smeared. You didn't go out onto platforms and say, look, this is what's happening to me. Something happened which then forced you to say, okay, since you guys are playing like this, let me now actually share my story because you guys are lying about me. What would happen in public that would make you want to speak out? What would the PIC do? What would happen with the AFGRI deal? I know you mentioned a plane and we're going to speak about it now, but what was happening in the public or maybe even in courts or even in the deal itself that made you realize, I think it's time for me to actually take action or to speak out?
So when we were on our way here, we were actually speaking about this, that you actually sit at the top of the table here and then they take you under the table and they take a hammer and they beat you up, and when you come out, brush your face and they say, wave and say, we are happy. And you always wave and say, I'm happy because you are afraid to lose your assets and your guarantees. Yeah. But what made it actually worse is the fact that when they were to defend themselves for their actions, which they've been going on for 10 years, they then bring my name into it and then say, this is what happened. I mean, 10 years ago at Daybreak, they got some consultants. And if I must tell you, if you go to a law firm or a consulting firm or a bank in this country and you say PIC, no one will assist you. They will actually help hammer you more. That is the practicality of it, because all of them want their business. All of them want to be associated with them. So they got some consultants. The first 2 pages of the consultants' reports are disclaimers. Then from there, the statements they make, they clearly put there that they never interviewed me, they never interviewed the other parties about them, and they write this report, and they make this report so that they can make it look like this Maponya is a monkey.
So the PIC initiated a report.
They initiated reports, not even one report. They initiated 2 reports at Daybreak. They initiated even this, we went to the Matjila Commission, and Judge Lex Mpati said to my advocate and my attorney, and I think my advocate was Celia. He said to my advocate and my attorney, you have no business being here. But we said, but we've been watching TV and our name has been mentioned. And according to what we understand, everyone has a right of reply. So we had files and a reply, affidavit that was written, that was never put into record. And if you read the report, the Matjila Commission report, we are not mentioned, we are not found of anything. There's even a letter from the lead investigator where he said they found nothing against us. But the report reads as a comment that they found the PIC's behavior in having many deals with us suspicious. But they didn't ask us the same questions that you are asking me now. How these deals came about.
Yes.
I mean, I gave them guarantees of properties that I am busy with. I went there to acquire money for a fund to build affordable houses for the missing middle, which is mostly government employees. And in the middle of doing that deal, AFGRI wanted to do a deal with me. So I had 2 deals done within that space. And I had the poultry deal that I had pre-negotiated before the AFGRI deal. So these are naturally funded, normal business transactions that they made sound and look like, I was sitting on a stoop somewhere and somebody came, picked me up, cleaned me up, put me in a suit and said, I want you to go there and be my friend. We're going to steal money.
Sure. I want to paint a picture based on what you're telling me. A lot of ordinary South Africans don't understand business at high levels, including myself. We understand things at our level on the ground. I take out a loan from a bank, Bank A, it gives me 5,000 Rand. I need more money, I go to Bank B, they give me another 7,000. I go to Bank C and they give me 3,000 Rand. All this off my payslip because I work, I have a job which I'm qualified for, I earn a living. If ever one of the banks comes in and wants to speak about, but this guy's got loans at different banks, the loans were earned off my payslip. I didn't steal money from a bank. I didn't get money backdoor. This is for an ordinary person to understand. Now, at a high business level, my understanding, again, from what you're saying is, I'm a businessman and I do deals. Just because I do a deal with AFGRI for 340 million doesn't mean I can't do another deal to build houses. It doesn't mean I can't do another deal for SA home loans. That's what business is. You can run a spaza shop and own a taxi and also have transport for children. That's business. But business at a high level has lots of numbers, which then confuses a lot of people. 340 million, 2.5 billion. These are big amounts. Your issue now is the PIC goes to the Daybreak Commission, and my understanding of the Daybreak Commission is they were reviewing a lot of PIC transactions, not just yours. I don't even know if yours was in the scope, to be honest.
It was not in the scope. That's where the actual problem starts.
So then in the Daybreak Commission, the PIC and their reports on whatever deals that they've done, which we're not here to speak about today, your name comes up and they're like, yeah, but we've also got this Maponya deal. And that's where then yourself and your advocate, Celia, come in to say, no, we'd like to reply to these allegations because they're not accurate. And you were told, no, but you guys are not within the scope. And this is where it starts becoming a problem for you because, number one, you're being painted in a bad light.
My name doesn't just come up. Standard Bank goes to the commission, uninvited. SA Home Loans CEO goes to the commission, uninvited.
This is based on the PIC reports now.
Yes.
To go and investigate why is Bank C
I'm not in the scope.
Okay.
How do they get to the commission?
Why did they go to the commission?
Because they owed me 45 million rands in fees for conceptual documents that I developed, and they passed the ball between each other about paying it. And it was a concept that on the 14th of September 2014, we held our inaugural board meeting and they refused the deal. They said, you must go and generate it on your own. I went and employed a team of professional engineers, CAs, and everyone, and I developed the product for the housing scheme, which included, like we say, from farm to table, which included from buying a barren land, developing it, and funding it. And that deal is actually what changed the fortunes of SA Home Loans around.
The SA Home Loans and Standard Bank going to the Daybreak Commission, this becomes separate from now Daybreak, AFGRI.
Yes.
This is something else now. Again, you've got Bank C that's got issues, or they're mentioning your name. And Bank A and B are like, oh, we also want to come and get involved here because we've got our own issue with this person.
Yes.
And they're all smearing you.
Yes, because they didn't want to pay me.
That was their only issue, Standard Bank and SA Home Loans. They didn't want to pay you for this conceptual document of a product that you were going to implement in SA Home Loans.
They paid the money over to the PIC, and then they said the PIC is not right in paying over the money to me. And let me tell you, all the development fees in the projects in Daybreak, there's also talk about fees. I paid the actual costs. PIC didn't pay the actual costs in most cases. We agreed that there will be, and it is in almost every funding deal, there's a 1% fee. In this case,
I'm listening, sir.
in this case, I think there's a 1% or 2% fee. In this case, the fee was 22 million rands. My costs were sitting at almost 15 million rands. The fee was 22 million rands. Guess what? PIC took half of that money as their 50% of the fees.
For something that they didn't conceptualize, develop,
No.
get due diligence.
They
and all the
took
things for
11 million rand. I took my 11 million rand I put back in the business.
But Nakona, you were meant to be recouping.
I was meant to be recouping. I put it in the business because there was no cash flow because they reneged on the working capital that they promised. Then we come again to this fee. There was an agreement that there will be a 1% fee charged to the raising because they couldn't pay me up front for the development. So I carried the cost of development. I employed all the people that developed all these papers and documents and everything. When the time came, the CEO of the SA Home Loans came to me and said, for the advantage of the GPF members so that we do not charge them a higher interest, how about if we remove the 1% fee? I said, but I've incurred the cost and you have seen it. I've held so many workshops with you. And actually, PIC just advertised the tender on the product on a document that I developed recently. I said, I developed these things. I went to the PIC. I said, PIC, perhaps because you always want 50% of these fees, and that's always been our agreement, why don't you give up your 50% and instead of the company paying 1%, let them pay 0.5% and transfer that 0.5% saving to the end user? We agreed. They signed a session. And when Standard Bank started making noise, they reversed the session. And I took them to court. And because I took them to court, they went to the commission uninvited.
Okay. All of these things are too complicated for me. And I think they're going to be too complicated for the audience. I think whoever's got a vested interest is going to have to find a way to maybe write a story or draw up a diagram to explain this whole thing. I want to try and simplify because I've got other questions here. You got money from the PIC, you got money from Standard Bank, and you got money from the IDC.
No, I didn't receive any money from Standard Bank.
No money from Standard Bank?
No.
Okay. Any money from the IDC?
No.
No money from the IDC? No. How much money in total did you get from the PIC? Because you mentioned 3 deals. AFGRI, you mentioned SA Home Loans, and you mentioned Daybreak. How much money did you get in total from them? And I'm assuming all of these were high interest.
1.9 billion.
In total?
Oh, let me tell you, on SA Home Loan, we got 400 million rands. To date, we have paid them over 800 million rands and we still owe them 380 million rands.
You got 400 million?
Yes.
You've paid them 800 million?
Yes. We still
And
owe
you still
them
owe?
almost 400 million.
So you basically got a bond. It's like a bond.
It's worse than a bond.
Yeah. Because if you buy a house for $1 million rand, you end up paying 2 million.
There's a
That's
rule
more than a
in
bond.
there's a rule in law that called in duplum whereby it becomes problematic if you have to pay a person more than twice what they lend to you in interest.
Jeez.
And this is what has happened to us.
Okay.
And when we write to them to say, can you please be humane and also in the spirit of BE, they tell us you signed.
Okay.
All humanity, all empowerment spirit and everything non-existent. They say you signed on the dotted line.
Okay. You got 1.9 billion in total from the PIC. Do you have any view of how much you've paid to them to date? I'm not separating capital and interest. You mentioned an 800 million figure. Is that what you've paid to date? Or are there other amounts you've paid?
I've paid them over $1 billion if I count what I paid for.
Over $1 billion.
If I count what I paid for AFGRI.
Over $1 billion paid. So if we exclude interest, there'd be an outstanding, let's say 900 million that you'd need to pay the PIC, which you would have paid.
Which I would have paid
if
they didn't
done
take
business properly.
If they didn't take the company away.
Okay.
And pumped more money into it. And what we are asking them, and have been asking them, is to give the company back.
Yeah.
Let's do a valuation. Let's pay you for the value it is at now, because obviously it's not at the value that we had acquired it for.
Yes.
And they are refusing. Is that an unreasonable proposition?
It shouldn't be. When you're getting divorced, you guys take the assets and you sell them and you split.
Exactly.
So they gave you 1.9 billion. I'm not going to include interest. You've paid over $1 billion. That's money from the PIC. You didn't get money from Standard Bank. You didn't get money from the IDC. I'd like to know now, in terms of shareholdings, do you still have a shareholding in AFGRI, in Daybreak, in SA Home Loans?
I'm supposed to have a shareholding in Daybreak. I don't have.
Did you have one at some point?
Yes, I had 64% shares which were transferred
64
without my consent.
And
without following any due process.
This was done by the PIC.
Yes. In AFGRI, I've been, I've given away the shares back to them.
The 20%.
Yes.
Which was meant to be 35, but the PIC took 15.
Yes.
You've given back 20.
I've given back the 20% because, and I wanted to have a divorce with them. So I gave them those shares, and I also sold the shares in SA Home Loans to them also.
How much of SA Home Loans did you have as a stake?
25%.
25%. You sold it to AFGRI?
No, to PIC.
PIC. Is this included in the over R1 billion that you've paid?
No, they still haven't paid me.
How much did you sell the 25% stake of SA Home Loans?
It's still a confidential amount for now.
Okay. As it currently stands, the PIC meddled in your 64% share of Daybreak. They've got the shares, but they didn't follow due diligence, and I guess that becomes a problem, and that's part of the reason you're in court. You gave back 20%, your 20% to AFGRI. Were you compensated for this?
No.
Or is it something like, I bought a car from you, yes, there were payments, etc., but please take your car back and now we're square up. You don't owe me, I don't owe you.
Yes.
Okay. So you don't own a stake in AFGRI anymore. And then you've sold your 25% stake in SA Home Loans to the PIC for an amount that you cannot disclose, and they haven't paid you yet.
No.
Okay. I think that's important. And I want to stop there in this very complicated story because I'm not a PIC business analyst. And the audience, I don't want to confuse them too much. I want to go out of this. I know we're here for this, but I want to go out of this and just talk, me and you. Even though, yes, I'm here in the capacity of ordinary South Africans. The Public Investment Corporation is an asset management firm. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it has 2 or 3 trillion under assets. They are meant to invest those monies on behalf of the stakeholders. The government employee pension fund is, I think, the biggest, and then there's others. I'm not sure who they are. That money is meant to generate value so that when your mom, my mom, when they retire from wherever they work as a teacher or as a nurse, the little bit that they were saving every month is meant to come back with hopefully some type of value. If no value, then at least preserved type of situation.
Preferably the type of value that we deliver.
Hola, Now, there have been many deals by the PIC that the ordinary person does not know about, including deals like Abo Steinhoff. There have been many deals, and some, I guess, have succeeded, some have not, right? you become one of the role players in this story. And as you play in this story, you haven't had a good experience. In the same way, we've got banks that are meant to offer loans for homes, cars, personal loans, and many people have got success stories. There are people now, and you've got Mr. Emerald van Sale, who's always on Twitter exposing some of the banks for overcharging people and to say, look, these guys may have done good things, but they've also done bad things. And you're saying this same PIC and some of the other role players they work with aren't always good, and I'm one of the people complaining. And where I want to go with this conversation is, number one, your views around the getting of funding from the PIC and other funding agencies of government. Number two, the use of money. And this is where now we're going to raise the airplane story. Because we hear stories of BEE guys that get funding, start taking girls to Dubai, start splurging. I think it's the first time I'm hearing of people buying aeroplanes as an accusation. And then the work itself, which is what actually I'm here for, to say, my mother was a school teacher. She had money that was going into places like the PIC. I can tell her now, oh lady, I've met someone who's been a beneficiary of your money invested there. And this has been their story. And then last but not least, this is a personal thing for me, but I'd like to hear your views. The GEPF, the PIC, are not democratic institutions in a so-called democratic South Africa. And in a South Africa where we speak about transformation and ensuring that the economy is shared, especially with black people. And our ordinary people who are meant to have representatives are not aware. We don't know who these representatives are, who are meant to be making the decision so that if you've got a Matjila Maponya investments that we can invest in, the money maybe should be going there and not a Marcus Jooste and a Steinhoff, where when the money disappears there, there's no commission. If anything, when it needs to be investigated, we are told there's no money to investigate them. And it becomes the same Steinhoff that says, look, we'll gift you money to investigate us. And Marcus Jooste, we're told, has taken his life. But that we're going to close if there's still time.
You asked them a lot of things.
No, I'll remind you, don't worry. Your thoughts around getting funding as a black business person, especially in the context of having to get guarantees in a country where black people, by and large, because of legacy, don't have anything. And you're blessed, you're privileged. You come from a family that was actually in business.
Black people are naturally set up not to start. After the Daybreak Commission, the PIC went on the same trajectory. Before, the PIC could fund people without having that much equity like they did with us. We had balance sheet, we were fortunate, but they could still fund other deals and provide also equity from one of their other funds as debentures and all those things. Even though they provide prohibitive interests that needs to be looked at, there has to be developmental interest. After the Daybreak Commission, BEE has been frowned upon. They have gone to a default mode that almost every other DFI, you name NEF, you may name IDC, you name anyone.
What's a DFI?
Developmental finance institution.
Okay, it's meant to be a funding institution in the spirit of saying we want to develop
of development, but they are non-developmental. You get money even easier from the bank than them, which is a very huge problem.
Yes.
They also don't take risk on entrepreneurs. You know, when you're supposed to be developmental, you are supposed to take a wider view that this person may fail maybe twice before they make it. And, you know, be prepared to take them along and have experts do it. Our organizations don't have those experts. They don't employ the services of those experts to mentor these people. Instead, they rely on a very flawed methodology called uphumlungwako. So you must come with a white person. It doesn't matter. You know, there's a deal I funded when I started housing development. It doesn't matter if that white person knows nothing about that industry. The fact that you just came with a white person who had a bit of equity gives you that credibility. And so they only fund acquisitions. They don't fund startups. That's why we don't have jobs. So if you want to go and start a company that makes something that let's say a steel bending company or a steel making company, whereas we're importing 90% of our steel, they wouldn't fund you. They would only fund you to go and buy
something that exists with existing jobs.
So they don't take risk, they don't initiate, they don't start new jobs, they don't provide things that our country needs. And even our own government's procurement systems are such that there's no difference between something that comes from Taiwan or something that comes from Alexander. You don't get points for manufacturing in Alexander. You don't get prohibitive for bringing in other things that we can make ourselves in this country. So we have a very flawed system that is racist in its nature and biased against black people. And we've got black people policing black people, and we've got a lot of people who are policing black wealth. If a person has money and he's made it legally and he goes with his girlfriend to Dubai, what do you and I have to do with it? But if that person has stolen the money, then it's a problem.
Of course.
So I have issues, with the policing of black wealth. I told you, I've always used an aeroplane because I live in rural areas. There's no airline that goes to my farms. There's no airline that goes to most of the towns that I work in. Kukemur, Van Rensburg, they've got the same problem. You go to Nampo, there's 100 aeroplanes parked there.
Nampo is one of the biggest farming gatherings, I think, in the country, if not on the continent, just for people that don't know.
Yes. There's planes parked there. But the Black Wealth Police don't go there and ask those people, why are you in an aeroplane? What happens? Because my aeroplane costs less than a Rolls Royce. But they don't police everyone who's driving a Rolls Royce. It's okay for a black man if he drives a Rolls Royce. But if he's going to buy a working tool, it's easier to go and buy an AMG Mercedes. The bank will give you money tomorrow. But go there and say, I want to buy a TLB.
That's one of the stories. That's one of the stories. So I'm going to ask you to give the value of the plane that you got as the hand-me-down, and then the value of the plane that you upgraded it with. I've got a problem, and again, I'm a small guy, but ordinary people, especially the ones that propaganda is pushed on, don't understand that there's a cost to running businesses. And at the lowest end, the cost is a calculator, it's a laptop, it's a computer, it's maybe a car. Depending on the business or the industry you're in, now you need yellow goods, you need TLBs, you need buses, you need trucks, you need cranes. If you're in farming where you're farming hectares and hectares of land, all the decent, not even huge, all the decent farmers I know own some type of aircraft because you can't drive through farmland at all. And people don't understand, at least the ones that would become critics, that it's a working tool. It's not a Gulf Stream to fly to Miami for gambling. And people don't understand that. And it's very easy to tell that story. Number one, to a point where you said you acquired the plane before you even did these deals. But even if you had acquired the plane after, you can motivate and say, look, the plane was for work. The question then could be asked, was the plane owned in your personal capacity or in the business capacity? Was it used for personal trips or for business trips? But if it was your plane and you were using it for work, the same way a person would have their own car, and then when they have to travel for work, they get a fuel allowance or whatever the case may be for work. It's for people to understand because we don't. And for ordinary people, when we hear Maponya is a BEE guy, when you hear Maponya is rich, when you hear Maponya owns an aeroplane, to us, it's the textbook that we have been taught that, no, this guy must be looting money. That's all that's going on here.
So the first plane I bought for 2.5 million rands. It's a non-pressurized plane that I used to get around a lot, and it helped me to do 5 times the deals that I used to do.
Okay.
So if I could do one deal in a week, with the aeroplane I could do 5 deals in a week because I could be in 5 different places far quicker and spend more time there.
Okay.
And I could inspect my properties. I could do aerial mapping. I could do spraying. I could do a lot of things.
Okay.
It was non-pressurized. And when I started growing and started taking people on trips to go and see projects and all those things, that's when I started learning that the corporate world, they have policies about single engine, double, twin engine, pressurized, non-pressurized, the level of comfort. So I had to upgrade it.
Okay.
And so my second plane was a hand-me-down, and the value was 14 million rands.
Both these planes were for work, not for leisure.
No, they are for work and for family, because I work in different provinces and different places, and I'm a family man. I have to get home at a point. I can't be stuck in a place when my child is having a recital at school.
Okay. These planes were bought from PIC funded money or from money from elsewhere?
Well, I didn't know the PIC in 2006.
Okay.
I had no transaction with the PIC in 2013.
Okay. Of the 1.9 billion that you got from the PIC, was any of the money used for personal consumption, or was it all business funding?
It was all business funding, but eventually the money generated is for my discretion, whether I reinvest in businesses or I have personal consumption. I'm also human.
That's outside of your obligations.
That's the reason I'm in business.
Okay, and I think that's also another important thing to highlight, because a lot of us, again, perception to what you were saying about if a person has made profits, monies legitimately, and they're taking university girls who are of age to Dubai, that is their prerogative. These are adults and they do what they want. We can judge them morally, but in terms of legally and all those things, they've done nothing wrong. And in your case, you're saying, look, I got funding. It was used for business. After taking care of my obligations, business obligations, we're speaking debt, we're speaking anything else. Any other money I make, I can be Kenugunene and eat sushi. It's got nothing to do with you, because it's what I am. It's my personality. You can buy horses like Marcus Jooste. You can buy wine farms. You can buy art. You can host parties. You can do whatever you want. But it's your money at the end of the day, and all your other obligations have been taken care of. And the money that was given to me is not money that I put into my pocket and I did things. Otherwise, it would have been straightforward. The PIC could have opened a case and said, this person misused funds, which I'm not aware that there is such an allegation against you currently.
And what pains me most is that there are so many Marcus Joostes that chout the PIC money, IDC money, and other things. There are so many people who have consumed those monies. Yeah. And they are not taking the flag. They are not in the public eye. No one is blaming them and spoiling their reputation. I, on the other hand, am one of the few who have actually repaid these monies and made the type of returns. And I get the reverse treatment. I don't even get to get a discount for the work delivered.
Do you think it's race-based, and do you think our government is doing enough? I'm not going to say with black entrepreneurs. I'm going to say with developing entrepreneurs, of which the overwhelming majority would be black. Do you think government is doing enough? And do you think the issues that you're raising now are race-based?
Well, the PIC happens to be almost 80% or 90% black, so it's very difficult to go and pull another race from somewhere in the middle of the bush and say it's race-based. It becomes only race-based when you find that banks collude to call you a persona non grata. You walk to this one, they say we don't want you. You walk to this one, they say they don't want you. And all of them don't want you for one reason or the other, but the people who are persecuting me are not white. They're not any other race. It's people who look like me.
Do you think we should be having a conversation around the PIC, the GEPF, some of the pension funds? Because a lot of employees are forced for their money to be put in certain funds, but they don't become decision makers in where the money goes. And we speak today about having a black government, which is meant to make decisions where government spending goes to uplifting black businesses. But I don't know if we're having a conversation around where we have a mini government, if it were to be put in that way, democratically voted by employees to say we want the people that are taking care of our money. Yes, of course, we want value, but we also want this money. When my son Maponya, when my son Mlojwa is looking for funding, he can't come back and say, I can't get funding. When my pension money is going to funding agencies and you're telling me my own son can't get funding, should we be having that conversation?
Well, the unions tried that. They changed the system at the PIC. They put a lot of union members there, but the problem is that if I'm a teacher or I'm a nurse and I'm sitting here in the management of a fund, does it make me qualified? I think we need oversight boards from those people,
Okay.
whereby they put oversight over the right professionals with the right experience. Not Penuel Mlocha coming from university and having done articles 3 years later is the CEO of some fund. That's one of the problems that we have, that when a person walks in, the level of experience and breadth, people get blown away by paper. Hence I said to you, if yours they came to you and put good paper in front of you and you have never been in an industry, it's very easy to get taken and give him all the money. And then comes Mlocha with a very, very good business proposition. And you say, no, your paper doesn't look good. So most of our businesses are looked at on paper, are not tested, are not looked at by the right people, because we don't call industry experts. I even say this about many boards.
Yes.
I mean, there are people who chair committees at the PIC who have only had one job experience in their life, but they're sitting on 5 different boards.
They've never run a business.
No, they've never run a single business. And they go and take decisions to go and... There's a recent incident where, the management advises the board committee on a transaction and to say that there's a dividend to be paid out, a very big amount of dividend. And the board committee, led by a chairperson of that board committee, gives instructions to people below the management to go and vote against the PIC receiving a dividend. How wealthy do you have to be to go and vote against a dividend being paid to you?
I'm letting that simmer because I think for anyone who understands what you're trying to say, it's actually a bit scary.
It's not a bit scary. It's very scary. You sign contracts, you don't honor them. You get Supreme Court judgments, you don't honor them. So there are people at the PIC who figure themselves. Actually, they called me to one meeting to make a presentation to the Group Investment Committee. And the first thing they told me after I had made this presentation was, we are the PIC. You must understand we work in our own way. So they run their own country. They live in their own country.
The reason I was biting my tongue and I let it simmer is I just don't want to speak too much. People don't understand why Elon Musk doesn't earn a salary, why Steve Jobs was paying himself $1 salary per annum, why people like Johan Rupert donate their salary every year. They don't get it. So to what you're saying, why would people at the top vote for people at the bottom to vote against a dividend? Seems counterintuitive. But you'd have to go down a rabbit hole to understand exactly what's happening at play. And yeah, I don't think it's going to be for today's conversation. For your personal intentions for Matjila Maponya investments, number one, you've suffered reputational damage, which I know is very problematic for you and your business ventures. What would you like to see happening? So there's an issue with the PIC and Daybreak and how they got shares, the 64%. There's monies that need to be paid for the 25% of SA home loans. Outside of these things being resolved, what else would you like to see happening?
I would like to see there's a new CEO that has been appointed at the PIC. He comes with a good reputation. Hopefully, he can make the necessary changes, but he will need board and committees that are actually appropriate. Like you say, I would want to see the necessary boards and oversight and the developmental role being put into play. There are people who are advocating for PIC only to invest in listed spaces, which are practically previously advantaged.
That's correct.
Spaces which I don't promote and support, but they should figure out how to do it. And some of us, whether they like us much or not, we are there, and there are others who are there if they don't like some of us. I think it's better. My father always told me that you can never have enough advice. It is better for them to continue seeking a solution that makes the people's money work for the people. Unemployment is rising rapidly, and our country is experiencing very serious problems, and we are sitting with excess cash that is not utilized properly.
Johan Rupert years ago would sit and give us, no, not sit, he'd be giving a speech. At the speech, he'd call out Julius Malema as being problematic with the EFF, which I guess he'd do now with Trump and Cyril Ramaphosa at the White House. But in that, ex-President Thabo Mbeki was in the audience, and he would say, I think Julius Malema I don't know if it was the EFF or he was still part of the Youth League, I stand to be corrected. He told Thabo Mbeki that, look, go and explain to Julius that when he speaks about white monopoly capital and our companies, that a lot of ordinary people's monies are in those same companies. And when you speak about the PIC being a country on its own, I mean, it's that, let's say, 3 trillion rand. The PIC is South Africa's version of BlackRock. They have a stake in most of any company we can think of, which is what Johan Rupert was alluding to. Of course, he was shielding himself because his company, Remgro, has also got a stake everywhere. But he was almost telling us that all the companies I have a stake in, the PIC, which is your parents' pension, also has a stake in and sits there. And that needs to be a conversation that we need to have as well. Do you believe that the PIC is a good institution? And do you believe, outside of the suggestions you've given, that there are any other changes that need to be made there?
There's a lot that can be made. It's an existing institution. If you read Good to Great, you can understand that depending on who and what their intentions are, it can be made great. But you mentioned a person called Johan Rupert. And I don't know if a lot of people know that Johan Rupert took a small company. It wasn't very small, that his father, Mr. Anton Rupert, started. and he turned it into a massive conglomerate. And people don't give Jews where they are Jew.
Yeah.
This is a man who created Rembrandt Group, took it overseas, bought some of the best brands in the world. He was funded.
Yes.
And he was funded mostly by the old banking system in the country. No one cried deal concentration. He provides many jobs. But what is wrong if you have a rainmaker, if you have a deal maker, if you have someone who makes things work repeatedly? What is wrong in partnering with Kholofelo Maponya and saying, Kholofelo Maponya, can we invest in the ventures that you go into, provided, of course, you always show us the due diligence and the prospects. Johan Rupert made a lot of Afrikaners wealthy.
Yes.
People went to him and he would co-invest with them. He would help them with giving guarantees to funding institutions. Some people may not know what we call RMB today was as a result of him helping 3 Africans gentlemen to come into the banking field.
Rand Merchant Bank.
Yes. And if you want to know where I would want to see myself, that is some role that I admire and I would aspire to see myself being able to assist other people start, use my experience and my capital and access to networks and capital to create a recurring economy and putting that money where the mouth is. And so he is not speaking something that he's not preaching something that he is not doing. So if you look at any other, Warren Buffett, you name anyone, all of them are able to increase and multiply through others, because you can't do everything. We all have only 10 fingers if we are lucky. and we have one stomach and we have one head, but there are many heads with many ideas and other things. So if the PIC were to have a policy where they would identify 100 rainmakers, do a due diligence on them, and focus on putting money with those rainmakers and getting their guarantees from those rainmakers, especially black rainmakers and local rainmakers of any other race, I would think that they would have a very good success model.
Let's see if the IDC will get it right with the 100 Black Industrialist program. It would be Warren Buffett as well, who would fly economy for the longest time and then eventually buy a private jet. And he had to explain that the only reason I bought it was so that it's easier for me to get to meetings. And it's just a working tool. Ntate Kholofelo Maponya, thank you so much for sitting with me. I don't know if there's anything we left out.
No.
Happiness.
Very happy.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.